Hello and welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Scott. I'm joined as always by my good buddy Rob, and we are here to talk about all the latest news in the pro wrestling world here on a Tuesday evening here in merry old England, as they say. We're going to be getting into Crown Jewel and the updates to the card. We're going to be getting into the TNA rebranding and our thoughts on that, and some actual kind of interesting news that's broken recently about it as well. And we're also going to be talking about the hot topic in wrestling at the moment, I would say, which is what does the future hold for another Englishman in Mr. Will Ospreay. So we'll be back talking about all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. On this channel, we bring you some great content from inside and outside of the squared circle. We will go through and offer some in-depth analysis of the biggest events of the year, as well as bringing you exclusive interviews with some of the industry's biggest names. There will also be live show reviews, in-depth features, and podcasts. So make sure you give that subscribe button a slam so you don't miss any of the action.
Muted.
For the kind of benefit of those that are listening on audio, or even those that are watching on video, you wouldn't have seen what I saw on my camera as that intro video was playing, which was Rob trying to sneakily fit in a sip of his Guinness, and we're both of us laughing if he could get it done in time, and then he just starts drinking it on air anyway. Don't worry, mate. This is a relaxed atmosphere here. Let's enjoy it. I've only got water at the moment, but there's some football on tonight, so I'll probably have a beer or two as well. But hey, we're not here to talk football. We're not even here to talk beer. We're here to talk pro wrestling. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, those that join us on the YouTube channel, we appreciate you. We'd love it if you would subscribe. But if you haven't heard already, we are now also uploading audio versions on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So look for the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling Podcast, and you'll find us there as well. But as I said earlier on, we are here on a Tuesday night to talk all the latest big news in the world of pro wrestling. And Rob, there's been quite a bit going on lately, man. And we haven't really had a chance to talk about quite a bit of it. So really excited to get this pod done. We'll hold off on, I think, TNA talk till later on, and it feels weird to actually say that and mean TNA now and not just Impact Wrestling, and we'll get to that later on in the show. We're also going to get to Will Ospreay, as I said, but last night on Raw we did get some new matches added to the card for Crown Jewel. It's shaping up already, Rob, to be a pretty decent show, and we mention it all the time. We talk about these Saudi shows now. They used to be glorified house shows. Now they are canon. They are part of the WWE PLE calendar, and I'm really looking forward to the show. What are your thoughts on the card overall?
Yeah, it feels like Crown Jewel has now become like it's the big five now, isn't it?
Kind
of feels
like that's now
a big five.
Kind of, yeah.
Great. It's an extra PLE that we can actually talk about. And I think, and I say this respectfully, that they actually put a lot of care into. The first couple of years, it was a little up and down. As you said, it did feel like a glorified house show. Since then, they've kind of swayed more into actually making it something and not a house show. And now, I honestly, one of them I really enjoy. But the fact that we're in the UK, we get to watch it.
We get to watch it at a reasonable time. You're right there. And of course, we're going to break down the matches in a moment as far as what's been announced. We won't be doing our predictions just here because, of course, we will be coming back for our predictions podcast, which will be coming on this channel and podcast feed very, very soon. So subscribe again if you haven't already, or follow us, whatever you do on those platforms. We'll be back for the predictions and preview episode next week. So it's not so much of a prediction or preview podcast here. We're just going to talk about the card and the matches overall. Of course, the first kind of ones that were announced that kind of, were bubbling under the surface for a while, of course, was Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre. Going to be interesting to see what happens there, of course, with the potential, I guess, for a heel turn with Drew McIntyre. Talking about heels, we've got someone really playing up to their heel persona now. Of course, that is Logan Paul. I'm really looking forward to seeing what these guys have to give us on Crown Jewel as well. Another one that got advertised quite a while ago is the women's world title match, a 5-way there. That's going to be an interesting one as well. Again, we won't get to predictions because that's another podcast for another day. But first of all, before I move into the next match, mate, what are you thinking as far as the 5 women in this match? Is is it just kind of scramble and throw as many on the card, or do you think there's a purpose for each and every one of them? Again, not getting too much into the predictions or anything like that.
Do you know, I think the way it's been booked, I'm happy that there's a lot more women on the card. Obviously, more women being able to perform at Saudi. At one point, we was lucky if we got one match, you know, or just lucky enough if we got 3 women on the show, you know. But to be able to have 5 women in just one match, and obviously they've got to add one more for EO if they do, man, it's so good for like the women within wrestling right now, especially WWE, to be able to perform on that stage. Obviously, there is a lot of restrictions when it comes to their attire, which is also something different because remember before they used to wear the t-shirt over the top, and nowadays they have like a longer attire, so which
like
is
a bodysuit. Yeah.
You know, and even that restrictions kind of changed a little. So
yeah,
for that,
even that, as much as, and again, it's always risky when we talk about Saudi shows because of the political side of it. But even that has become a weird thing that I look forward to, seeing the new attires for the women, what they're going to go with. So it's such a strange thing. But like, the participants in the match themselves, though, what are you thinking as far as, of course, we've got Rhea Ripley, we've got Nia Jax, Zoe Stark, Shayna Baszler, and Raquel Rodriguez. Wait, she is still called that, right? I always get mixed up with her name. Anyway, what do you think as far as like the need to have 5 women in this match?
I really don't know. Is it just, have they announced that it's just a pin and done, a pin and win?
Oh, like I'm not sure
elimination?
About it. Yeah.
Obviously that will be really interesting if they do it as an elimination. You know, I keep saying it. Bring back a championship scramble. Everyone loves a championship scramble.
That's true.
You know, I'm not against that. But the women in the match, great. The fact that Nia's kind of around that as well, which is good.
She's been the most featured out of the challenges, I would say, right?
But Stark, for me, she kind of babyface turned after attacking Trish. And then what happened? Like, same with
the whole Trish thing was like, we were all really into the kind of, I guess, possibility that this was going to be a big thing for a kind of up and comer. And while I did enjoy what they did together, why it was dropped like as soon as that feud was over. Neither of them have done anything, it feels. So bit of a strange one there. Maybe they're throwing her in this because she's going to win the title. Who knows? Maybe. Again, not getting into my prediction just yet. I'm saving that for our predictions episode where it really matters, of course, because of our league table. Another match to talk about is the newly added Cody Rhodes versus Damian Priest. Now on Raw, Damian took Cody out with a chair attack on his leg. I did see a meme already of Cody in the ring with a leg boot on, with his arm raised. Did you see that? But it was, basically a spoiler for Crown Jewel sort of thing. I wouldn't be surprised. Again, not going to get into predictions just here. But what do you think about this match? Are you looking forward to it? Personally speaking, I think it's a good thing for both of them. Keeps them both busy and away from what they're really doing, which is Damian Priest someday going for a world title and Cody Rhodes someday finishing the story. So it kind of extends both those the need to kind of rush both those things essentially. So I'm glad it's a bit of a distraction there. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I really like the idea of those two going head to head. It's a nice distraction, as you said, because there's some other members of Judgment Day that are kind of doing something else right now.
Yeah.
So it's still Judgment Day as a whole being shown, but it's not as a unit, it's as individuals to show what they can do. The other thing that really stuck out to me though was, do you remember back in, I think it was WCW, it matters over WCW or really early WWF, when Dusty was in a leg cast, right? And obviously there was stories of Cody saying that Dusty would stay in it to keep kayfabe at home and stuff like that. So are we going to get something similar with Cody within that?
Could do,
leg cast, but it's not officially a leg cast. So and so.
Yeah, I mean, we are just over a week away. You'd imagine he's going to come out on Raw with it, and then next week, I guess, and kind of say he's going to, I'm not giving up, I'm still going to be there, and all this kind of stuff. Of course, Crown Jewel is November the 4th, so a little bit of a way away now. But of course, they're definitely going to be playing into this whole can he kind of pull through. And again, once we get into our predictions episode, I'm sure we'll have a bit more of an idea as to how much they're playing into that factor as well. Like you, looking forward to seeing the Judgment Day member do something on their own. Priest, of course, has the money in the bank, but weirdly enough, I think still being in position with someone like Cody, even though Priest is the one with not a title, but you know what I mean. I think this is still a good opportunity for him to kind of shine with a massive star at the moment in Cody Rhodes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say, well, like when they were doing like a lot of the house shows, remember when you had Money in the Bank in London this year? Obviously I went to one of the house shows, like not in London, and Cody was going against a lot of the guys from Judgment Day, kind of on that circuit, or on that loop, should we say? So it's not like they're alien to each other and they don't know how to work and things like that. Like they know what works, what doesn't work, and so on and so on. So it's going to be kind of, it'll be refreshing to actually see it on a main screen, like an actual, other than that on house shows. But yeah, I'm intrigued. You know, it's that I wonder how this kind of intertwines with kind of the Judgment Day, and obviously going up with Roman and with Cody kind of being involved, and Jey Uso being around. Like there's so much, like it all kind of intertwines, and it's just a long story.
That's it. There's a lot of moving factors with this at the moment. I mean, you've got the dream match. I think a lot of people want to see is the Judgment Day versus Bloodline, but it's tough to know whether or not that's actually going to happen because they're both heels. They've kind of intertwined, as you say, on Raw and on SmackDown. You've got the mix-up of the Usos. Of course, we haven't really spoken about it, but Jey Uso is no longer a tag team champion. We'll get into that in a little bit as well, I'm sure. Quick comment here from Andrew Spores. Wouldn't mind the Cody injury angle if they hadn't done it with his hand/arm against Lesnar. Exactly that, Andy. Of course, great friend of the channel there. Thanks for joining us, mate, in the comments. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when they first battered his leg on Raw. I was like, again? Like, are we really doing this? And like, even that storyline, people were like, we don't need that. Like, he's already the kind of underdog in the Roman Reigns situation. Why do we need him to overcome Brock Lesnar? And it was like, okay, you know what? They pulled it off. It was quite good. But as Andy says, it doesn't mean we need to see it again. So I really hope it's not I hope he's not in a boot on Raw, basically.
Yeah, I mean, let's say he is on a boot on Raw, right? What if Cody can't do it, but Jey can? So Jey steps in for Cody because there's already the Judgment Day bloodline.
Yeah.
Do I want to say connection? There's something there. Obviously, they stood with Heyman and that. Obviously, involved in that.
Yeah.
There's also Jimmy Uso, which could set up for something. So could that be like a swerve to do something? This is to set up this kind instead, so we don't actually get Cody versus Damian, and maybe it becomes Damian versus Jey.
But I think a bait and switch is a risky thing on a show like Crown Jewel. So
100%.
I mean, you could still, I mean, if you announce it on Raw, you kind of get away with it then because you still got a few days. But taking Cody off a show I don't know, Cody would still have to be involved somehow. So it's unless Cody just isn't going, which I can't see. John Cena is going to be there, it seems, because John Cena was kind of part of the early promotional talk when people first started putting it out there that it would be November the 4th. And then, of course, it got confirmed by WWE that Cena was going to be a part of it. And, of course, on this, great run we've had him back on recently. I mean, great just to have him back, essentially. So be interesting to see what he does if we do get an announcement with him in the coming days. Of course, he's been heavily tied up in the kind of main event scene on SmackDown at the moment. Not as a kind of wrestler, more as a kind of cheerleader in the corner of, as you say there, LA Knight. Yeah, going up against, of course, Roman Reigns. Again, we won't be touching on predictions just yet. But we kind of touched on this at the end of Fastlane, didn't we? When we did our recap and review of what do we do with LA Knight? Do we put him in this position here, which it felt like it might be that way? And my idea was kind of, no, send him after the IC title. Like that's kind of my kind of thinking for it, because there is that risk that he doesn't win this. Again, we won't get to our predictions. I don't want to influence Rob. Rob ain't influencing me because we've got a table to be battling out here on the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. But I am a little bit concerned that hey, without showing all my cards, I don't think anyone's beating Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel, is what I'll say. So,
look, honestly, I don't want to say it's like the Heyman. It's not a prediction; it's a spoiler kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as much as I'm a huge fan of LA Knight, he isn't. Honestly, I don't think he's winning it, man.
Yeah, I mean, all right, okay. Well, yes, but you know what? Spoiler for my prediction. he ain't winning this.
No,
But which is a shame because, like, and this is part of the problem. You want LA Knight to be a believable challenger, and when he is prepped for that, even if he doesn't become, because he was never the planned person to beat Roman. But I do think, as I said, I think on that stream that can always change. You know, if they can move it away from Cody, they moved it away from, you know, Sammy was a shock, you know, kind of potential.
I know, yeah.
So maybe LA is the answer in the end, but that would be damaged by this unless there's kind of a shenanigan finish, which we've had way too many with the bloodline. So that's a bit of a concern. It is a bit of a worrying thing. Like, how do you protect him? Again, we won't go too much. I keep spoiling, kind of plugging our predictions here. But overall, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm excited to see them together. They've been doing well on SmackDown. The promo back and forth have been quite good as well. But for me, it does feel a little bit risky. What are your thoughts on that, mate, before we move on to our next part?
Yeah. Look, as I said, I love LA Knight. Do I want to see him win a title? Definitely.
Don't you mean yeah?
Yeah. But I just, is it now? Like, do you know what I mean? And I know I say that it's so strange to say that because we always go, pull the trigger now. This guy, he's ready. Yeah. But I think being in a ring with Roman, I think will be the right kind of. I think Cena's going to be a part of something.
The only thing is, he can go sideways and go across the Raw or something like that and go after the world title. That's the only other way they can do it. Yeah. But he needs to, for me, he should have won the IC title. I know that kind of implies. I know, but that's got to end at some point as well. And he's got to move up to that next level. As we mentioned, again, if you want to hear our thoughts a bit more in depth on that kind of possible scenario, check out our Fastlane recap and review. Of course, we were talking about the show, but we did go off on a few tangents as we tend to do. Going back to the Cody match, though, because Andy's left us another great comment here. It says, I'm hoping it's just a way to escalate the feud to a personal level where Priest has to put his Money in the Bank briefcase on the line for Cody to win and set him versus Roman Part 2 next Mania. That would be crazy. Like, I'd be very upset if they take the briefcase off of Senor Money in the Bank. I don't like when they do that. I get your reasoning for it, though, Andy, because I also don't like the idea of him winning the Royal Rumble. So, that just feels a bit too obvious. But, and he won last year, right? So it just, I don't want that. That kind of fixes that in some way, but it muddies the water as far as the Money in the Bank goes. I don't like when they put it online, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like sometimes the Money in the Bank going on the line can work for the greater good. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not always, but for example, I know you hate it, but Otis losing it to the Miz, like, it made sense.
It can deal with a problem.
Yeah, they can deal with that. You know,
I don't think Priest is a problem, but yeah.
No, but I think it's always hard putting the Money on the Bank on a bona fide babyface, like a white meat babyface, because if they get that win, but it's like a steal, kind of like an Eddie Guerrero steal, then it's a bit like, but did he do it though? Like, is that what he would do? I think the likes of Dolph Ziggler, it was kind of transitioning from the heel into a babyface, and it was pushed in a specific way as it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Same with Brian when he, I think he cashed on Big Show.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Do you remember that? And Big Show kept saying to him, "Take your chances." So he took his chance on Big Show. Like, the story evolved from that. But for someone like Cody, the only way it would work would be the same way that it worked with Cena. Like Cena said, I'm putting it on the line.
That's exactly it.
Because it's honorable for it. Like, because Cody is that character. He wouldn't take a shortcut.
100%. So, yeah, I think if what Andy's saying does happen, then it will be like what you've just said there. It'll be Cody kind of putting it forward and laying the challenge down, sort of thing, saying this is the date, be there, you know, like that kind of thing. But and that's better than the Rumble win for me, but it's still like, I think the Money in the Bank still needs to somehow involve the World Heavyweight or something more to do with the Judgment Day. Again, not saying I want to split up anytime soon, but hey, he's gonna have that contract for up to a year, so we've still got until what, June? It was the 1st of July, wasn't it? So we've still got up until then. So hopefully there's a lot more in the tank for Senor Money in the Bank. That rhymed and it was not intended, but there we go. You thought you tuned into a podcast, you've turned into a rap battle. Right, let's move on to another story now. Is that we've just got the return of TNA wrestling, or it's been announced at least.
Oh,
Of course,
man.
that Hard to Kill 2024, January the 13th, I believe they will be rebranding officially as TNA Wrestling, who, of course, I'm referring to Impact Wrestling. That's a confusing history, Rob. The naming, I made jokes about years back when TNA or Impact or Global Force Wrestling Superstardom Challenge wasn't quite my bag. But I gotta say, in the past year or so, and we keep saying it on this channel, they've really started to kind of kick up a fuss and make people turn their way. And we've done some articles on the Rebellious Noise website. So if you haven't checked them out already, please do at rebnoise.com. That's REBNOISE.com, about the change into TNA and, of course, about their UK tour, which they're about to get underway on here in Old Blighty very, very soon. Sadly, we are unable to attend. We did have the opportunity to do some press, but other commitments sadly got in the way. But of course, wish them nothing but luck and really can't wait to see what happens. I know our friends in the industry over on WrestleSphere will be covering this. I know Sam's going to, I believe it might be the Coventry show. So if you want to kind of learn more about that, then check out their work on WrestleSphere. But anyway, bringing it back to Impact and just kind of the hype train they're on at the moment, mate. I think it's just been incredible. I think they've really capitalized on so much that was kind of working out their way online. They were getting quite a bit of a buzz. The Impact 1000 things, Tenay and West going into the Hall of Fame. Like, it's all nostalgia based at the right time. And Scott D'Amore did a Q&A earlier today, and he was basically answering some questions from the media and talking about, of course, what people want to know, the six-sided ring and the championships. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. But, I think they've cashed in, to use a wrestling pun, at the right time, because this nostalgia has been bubbling under the surface for TNA, and they're talking about how wrestlers have grown up wanting to be in TNA, not Impact Wrestling. And I saw a great point that Scott D'Amore made, was that they had to steady the ship as Impact Wrestling, and now it's time basically to turn back into TNA, and we can focus on the good things about TNA, not the messy times with Global Force and trying to go head-to-head with Monday Night Raw and all that kind of awkward changeover. I've actually been listening to Jeff Jarrett's podcast recently in the kind of building of TNA, and he said on the third episode of that, he basically said he thinks TNA died the day they signed Hogan. That's another podcast for another day, but I do see where he's coming from in the sense that was a different TNA. And I think all the nostalgia now is for that TNA, that pre-Hogan Bischoff era TNA. And not just them. I'm not trying to paint them as just bad guys, because there was some interesting things in what they did as well. But essentially from then on, TNA didn't feel like the same company. So going backwards and trying to recapture what was good about TNA, and I think at a time where people are ready to enjoy and embrace that nostalgia, I think it's a fantastic move. What are your thoughts overall, mate, on the return to TNA?
Oh, mate. I'm so excited. I am so excited. I watched Bound for Glory, and I don't know how much you've seen. Obviously, I know you probably read like the recaps and reviews and things like that. What a pay-per-view! Like, from start to finish, honestly, it was so good. The Ospreay match. If Meltzer doesn't give that a 5-star or a 6-star or whatever, then he's absolutely
whatever the going rate is these days. Yeah,
man, it was so good. Just everything about it, the pay-per-view from start to finish. Like, the timing was right for me. Honestly, I would give, if I was gonna give it anything, it'd be like an 8, solid 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10.
Wow,
like, it was just so enjoyable. Like, the fans wanted it. The big finish at the end with the promo for TNA, Scott D'Amore doing that passionate promo in the ring after. Just everything about that was just phenomenal. Speaking of when you're going to talk about contracts, so PCO has re-signed. So is he officially the first person to now re-sign with a TNA contract?
As TNA, yeah. You know what? Interesting that you should say that, because again, on the Scott D'Amore thing I was watching earlier, he basically said how like there are people there who are like, I always wanted to be a TNA knockout, like, and they're like, you're now officially, all these newer guys that have come into Impact Wrestling for the past 4 or 5 years, they're now TNA wrestlers who kind of maybe thought, I wish it kind of, everybody's excited about this rebranding, and like I say, I think it come at the end of what's been received as a very, very good pay-per-view with Bound for Glory. I'm just glad they're kind of kicking up that fuss, as I said earlier on.
it makes me laugh because I was checking Twitter and people are like, oh, no one watches TNA. It's just a thing to get fans back. But you realise that it was TNA, what Impact, before they done the TNA thing, was trending. Like on Twitter. It was trending on Twitter, number one. And then they done this TNA thing. Then TNA was trending on Twitter, number one.
Yeah.
Like, there is a buzz around them. They've been
Heads are
quietly,
turning,
Scott
man.
Jim Moore said, they've been quietly just digging at the surface, getting their stuff together, getting a level, getting the right people in. You know, from PCO to Will Ospreay to Jordan Great. Like, there's so many people. Trinity recently joined the match with her and Mickey James. Fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, there's a spot when we throw back to Mickey James from 2005 or 6 against Trish. If you know the part I'm on about. Like, it's just little things like that, man. The whole thing that just, they are buzzing right now. I think it's controversial, but I'm going to say, I don't want to look at it as competing with WWE, AEW, and all that rubbish. It annoys me, but I will say the buzz that we've got right now for TNA feels like the same buzz that we had when AEW was first coming out.
It is interesting, man. Like, they've capitalized so well. Like you say, what Scott D'Amore said about kind of just quietly going about their business, and then now they're ready to kind of flip that switch, it seems. I'm really excited. Like, this is the most excited I've been for this company, whatever you want to call it, in a long time. And that has been building for the last, again, like I say, year, especially last 6 months, getting more and more intrigued in what they were doing. The fact that they were coming back over here to the UK, not just because I'm biased, but just because that kind of shows intent and it shows kind of regrowth. Because, you know, they are still in smaller venues and stuff like that, but they're announced that they're trying to do bigger stuff now. I think getting a new lick of paint is going to do the world of good for them as well. I think the Impact branding, like that changing over to that was kind of, they tried to move away from the kind of TNA, what it kind of, you know, meant, the double entendre, as they say. But I like, now it's not about that. Now it's just about a nostalgia for that company. And I understood when they moved the company over to just Impact Wrestling, but when was that? 2012 or something like that. They moved over to just being called Impact, and I got it because of the show was Impact. But now they're trying to be like, TNA and Impact are going to be two different things. Like, TNA is the company, Impact is the show, and that's how it used to be. So really excited to see how that kind of comes to fruition in 2024. Just a few kind of things to mention from that Q&A I mentioned a moment ago from D'Amore. The big questions, of course, are, I think, the 6-sided ring and the titles. So essentially what he said about the 6-sided ring was, no, it's not coming back, which is a shame. I think visually it is fantastic. But as a lot of people have been reporting lately, you talk to any wrestler and they'll say, no, it's uncomfortable to work with. And he was basically saying, look, you might love the 6-sided ring, but what do you love more? Your ring or your wrestlers being healthy and putting on a good show, essentially? And I think when you put it like that, it's kind of hard to argue. Now, I love the 6-sided ring. I think it did separate them. I think it did. That's part of the nostalgia for me. You know, I think it is great visually and even interesting what they can do in the ring and stuff like that. Certain wrestlers, I would like to see the 6-sided ring brought back for one-off shows. You know, maybe special occasions. You know, like kind of an old school night or something like that, or just like, you know, like how they used to have Lockdown and stuff like that, where it was all cages. Which was a bit overkill, and WWE would end up doing the same sort of thing as well. But you know, a ring won't change too much. So I think just a one-off is the way I'd personally like to see the 6-sided ring be repurposed again. What are your thoughts on the 6-sided ring?
Do you know, again, I think it's not TNA without a 6-sided ring. I agree. I honestly do agree. But every person that spoke about it and reported about it said the ring's too tight. There's not enough give. It's do you know what I mean? Like, they realized how less impact it had, excuse the pun, on like how much more of an impact it had on them, whereas compared to when they went back to the 4-sided ring. Jordan Grace on Twitter actually put, someone said, it's not, if it's not a 6-sided ring, is it really TNA? And she replied with, do you all want us to have long careers or a 6-sided ring? Which is exactly the point. Like, TNA is back. You're not getting everything about it because we're not getting Abyss and AJ Styles. And
Good point.
We're not getting it. But yes, there's parts of it I'd love to see. You know, I'd love to see another Lethal Lockdown, the TNA with like the X Division and the wires going to go. I mean, and we can still kind of get that. But you have to put their body, their health, their well-being, their career, that comes first. Then you worry about a ring, because they're already throwing themselves at a damn floor as it is. What do you want them to hurt themselves even more? Like, do you know what I mean? So like, the 6-sided ring, 4-sided ring, I don't care. Like,
same. I think when you balance it out like that, you think, you know what, I'm gonna have to just deal with it. You know, let's just swallow it and take the 4-sided ring. But again, if they can do the 6-sided as a one-off where it isn't going to impact them, again, pun, but not too badly, then I'd be happy to see that at least, or even a match. I mean, a match would be difficult to set up 6-sided for one match, but I think it should be used in some way if they can do it safely. But other than that, 4-sided. Well, you know, like you say, it's not the same TNA anyway. It's a new version of TNA, which is, you know, a mixture of what Impact has been lately, and you know, the old branding of TNA in some ways. Even the logo is not the exact same logo; it's a rework version of that original logo as well. So, interested to see that. Another interesting point was the titles. Of course, they're going to have to put TNA on their titles either way. And Scott D'Amore was asked basically, what are you going to do with these titles? So, he basically said he's going to have all new championship belts, and he was kind of saying, look, we've heard the fans, some people like this belt, some people like that belt. But essentially what he was saying was, like, we're going to have to get new ones, and you're going to see what they're going to look like soon. But they said that if they were to flip the switch today, those champions would be the TNA champions. They're not starting again. They're not doing tournaments or vacating the titles. So
I respect
if it was flipped today, Trinity would be the Knockouts champion, TNA Knockouts champion. You know, Alex Shelley would be the TNA World Heavyweight champion, which I think is what they should do. I know it's tempting to do this, and ironically, again, listening to Jeff Jarrett's kind of piece on the early days of TNA recently on My World, as if that podcast needs a plug over ours, but there you go, that's where I listened to it. He was basically saying that when they had the NWA TNA titles at the time, they did start all over again, but essentially because they won a new champion in Ken Shamrock, and they didn't want who had the title at the time, and yada yada yada. But essentially they did go about it that way. But that was a brand new company, so I kind of get a bit more there. But I am glad, as it seems you are as well, mate, that they are kind of just putting a new lick of paint on it, essentially.
I mean, when WWF became WWE, still the same champions. So if you're going to bitch and complain about it, hey, it happened ages ago. You know, like, if it happened in another company and you are absolutely fine with it, so don't start moaning now. Like, it just annoys me with that sort of thing. But look,
let's just be happy with what we got, man.
It's a positive thing, man. Like, we've got another wrestling company. I say another. It's always been there, but we have a wrestling company now that's like, it's our turn. Like, it's our turn to actually like, get ourselves on the map. So, I mean, and I don't like a brand warfare. I hate it. It's more wrestling for us. There's things that I don't like in every single company. Right. So, and I think it's always going to be that way. But where does this sit? Like, is this in the position of its equivalent to NXT? Is this an equivalent to AEW? Is it a Raw and SmackDown level? Like, I'm intrigued to see where they go, because, you know, like, where are they going to kind of fit themselves in? Obviously, what night are they going on? Are they getting a new TV deal? All that stuff still to come out. So there's just such a buzz about it, and I'm so glad that we've got WWE, now we've got AEW, and kind of now we have TNA.
Yeah, we have it back. Yeah, it's like you say, it's been there, but like it feels different. Like, something has felt different about that company for the past year anyway, as we said. But I think, you know, are they going to be pushing for that second spot? You know, like they say they're going to start going for bigger venues and stuff like that. And I think this is a really, really key time for TNA, because they're going to have a lot of eyes on their brand that haven't been on their brand either before because they were too young to really watch TNA, or haven't been on there for a long time. Like I've been, again, up until this past year, I hadn't paid much attention to Impact for a while. But they've made me turn my head, and like it's been going further and further. And then, you know, you put TNA in front of me, I'm fully on board. So
I mean, we've been talking about it on the pod literally for about a year, and like we'll say, oh, we'll talk about TNA, and we kind of don't, like, or Impact at that point, and we haven't really. And it feels like this is the first time we've actually had a bit of a discussion mentioning TNA, and you know, we maybe been able to do a watch along, or for the next year when they do like when they'll be crossing the line, bound for glory or something like that. if we're able to do like an old one and discuss that in comparison,
I'd
like
love
we're able
to. The
to
thing
do,
is,
man.
recently I've really had this urge. See, they're doing this at the right time because they've played it so wisely again with Impact 1000, the Hall of Fame, all coming in the last kind of few months. I've had this real urge to talk about old TNA and watch old TNA, and I've just been thinking, like, how can we do it? Like, how can we fit in? Like you say, like, do we do it around the Slammiversary? Do we, like, it kind of feels a bit different, not really the same company anymore. But now they're like, no, that's us. Like, we're embracing who we were, the good stuff at least. And I'm all for it. And I think, this is a great opportunity for fans, media like ourselves to kind of be able to plug ourselves back into TNA, and kind of, like, I guess heal those wounds. Do you know what I mean? Because it, like, we've got to be honest, man. Like, it went to, I'll censor myself, but like, it really did. But hey, things are turning a corner, it seems. But they've got to be careful again because they're going to get a lot of eyes on them now. And you know what it's like, even with these company fanboys against each other already, where they're like, "Oh, show me what you got. Oh, look, I can't believe you did this," and you've got a PC and they ain't got a PC, and moan about the stupidest stuff. Like, there's always going to be that, but this is a real opportunity to take genuine wrestling fans and turn them back into TNA fans, and that's what I'm looking forward to, and I really hope it does happen. But yeah, looking forward to seeing more of that. Now, an interesting person to talk about is someone you've touched on already. There is someone that appeared at Bound for Glory, and that's Will Ospreay. Now, Will Ospreay's contract, of course, is coming up soon with New Japan, and this has been a talking topic for a kind of, I guess, the last few months anyway. But now that we're getting closer to the date, it was always going to pick back up. He's flirting with a lot of companies. He was at All In with AEW. And faced Chris Jericho. I was fortunate enough to be there in person, so a fantastic matchup between the two there. That was great. He's done a number of good interviews online that have kind of, I think, healed some wounds as far as people's kind of perception of him, I should say. And he's been doing good work in New Japan, don't get me wrong. And the kind of WWE question's been coming up lately as well. Then he appears in Impact. He was recently quoted saying, I always wanted to be a TNA fan. I've seen plenty of interviews of him back in the day when we had the wrestling channel over here in the UK. And like I'm sure a lot of us did, he was watching the 6-month out-of-date TNA shows that we were getting at the time. And I know that's how he kind of got into wrestling, was through TNA, believe it or not. So could that be his permanent home? I think the best thing for Ospreay to do is to do, wherever he goes, is the temporary deal. What's your thoughts on the Ospreay situation?
Look, I think it's either one or two things. If it goes AEW, he fits in at AEW, right? That's just a given because of their style of wrestling, what they do, and all that stuff. I think the same could be said if he went to TNA, because it's that same. I mean, the match that you had on Bound for Glory shows that. If you go WWE, their style's different. It's tighter. It's watered down. They don't want to get injured. Ospreay's already said, like, he's 30. His body already feels banged up. So I don't know. I mean, look, this is how I've got to look at it. If he goes AEW, we get dream matches there. If he goes WWE, we also get dream matches there. If we go TNA, he could be the new AJ Styles of TNA. Like, there is potential there. Imagine him being the TNA's. He's TNA, Mr. TNA now.
I think that is the draw that TNA have at the moment, because we've talked quite a bit about TNA already. But I think the draw for TNA is that someone could go there and be their star. It's like when, like, a football team make someone their captain to get them to stay, and they're like, we could build the team around you. Stay. Like, we're making moves here, sort of thing. We're going to be building, pushing up the table. I feel like that is what the position that TNA have now. Whether or not some wrestlers want that, because they might think, you know what, I'd rather be like a little bit further in the background, but have a bigger payday and have a bigger stage, essentially, and maybe be able to get to the top of that space. Or do you want to go right to the top and we'll strap the rocket to you, and you've got the company on your back? And like you say, that could be an opportunity for AJ, well, the new AJ Styles, as we're calling him now, Will Ospreay, which I think he'd like the kind of comparisons. Don't get me wrong, being such a big fan, but yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not obviously we're not saying that he's just AJ Styles.
No, of course not.
He really isn't. But AJ Styles was TNA. That was it.
Yeah.
Until he left, he was TNA. You know, like through and through. Ospreay could be that. Like, because I mean, if you talk about WWE as in the face of the company, yes, we've had The Rock, we've had Cena, we've had Austin. Like, do you know what I mean? At the moment, probably I would say Cody, LA Knight's kind of floating around. Seth is floating around. There's a lot of names. If you go AEW, boy, there's a lot of names. Too many.
Yeah.
Right. And it just feels like there's too many. There isn't a definitive face for AEW. And I really, and I say this nicely, Ospreay's not going to be that person. Like, he just isn't. But TNA, there is a lot of potential. You know, there isn't someone really there as an ultimate babyface that's the main person of this company.
Yeah.
So if he signs, he sets himself up to be that person. Because they're not going to sign him and then sleep on him.
I think it'd be somewhat similar to, again, we're not comparing directly here, but somewhat similar to CM Punk being the face of AEW when he first showed up. Because it'd be clear, like, you haven't had a star like this before. You've got ex-WWE guys, you've got big guys from the indies, and you've made some stars, but you haven't had a CM Punk. And I think it'd be the same for Ospreay. Yes, they've had these stars in the past. They've had Kurt Angle, Kevin Nash, you know, Booker T. They've had big stars in the past, and even the ones they made. But in this new era, in the past 5-6 years, Ospreay would be the biggest star. And yes, he's wrestled there a few times again, just a few days ago as well. And just in a few days here in the UK, he's going to be wrestling for him again. But yeah, to kind of pin himself down, I think will be interesting. His contract comes up in February, I believe. He's now being represented by Barry Bloom, who's done a lot of these negotiations for big guys over multiple companies as well. So that's an interesting piece of news that broke recently, of course. But I believe that's been the case since around August. So AEW have been aware of that as well. But they are another kind of company where they're kind of, you know, in the race or whatever kind of phrase you want to use. I think I've butchered that, but there we go. Hat in the ring. What am I trying to say? The point is, AEW want to try and get him as well, and then WWE are going to want to try and get him. Now, if I was Will Ospreay, right, this is what I would do, right?
Yeah, go on.
Depending on what each company offer, you know, it's going to change. But on the surface, I would personally go, because it's always been this chat that he doesn't want to move to America and he don't want to do WWE full time. But like, how could you say no to? How could you not wrestle in WWE once? Like, feels like the kind of thing that I think a lot of wrestlers are going to feel. So if I was him, I would go to WWE for a little bit. I'd do the main season of WrestleMania to SummerSlam or something like that, and then just lock it down as a 6-month contract or something like that. Limited and stuff like that. If they really want you, they'll do something with you. And then obviously WWE might think we ain't letting you go after that. You know, so they might not allow it either. But he is the hottest free agent about to be anyway in the entire wrestling world. And that alone, we've seen in the past, is enough to make WWE go, you're mine. You know, they've done it before.
They've done it with AJ Styles.
Exactly. So I think he should go to WWE for a few months. And then after that, this is it's too simple me putting it like this, don't get me wrong, but I would go to TNA, because then there'd be a star of TNA and use that rub I've got from WWE to help TNA further, because he's, in my opinion, as much as I do enjoy AEW, I think he will be lost in the shuffle.
100%.
They're rebuilding themselves and he's done that. That's the good thing about AEW, is that loads of stuff, like Okada's there this week, right? But the bad thing about AEW in some ways is that when it comes to signing them up, it might work against you, where people go, I've done that, you know, I've been there. But it might work in your favor, because like people have been backstage and they go, you know what, this is decent. When I'm free, I'm coming here. So it could work either way. But if I was Ospreay, I think I'd be, knowing his history, I'd feel like I'd want to do WrestleMania season, and then I'd want to go to TNA and be the man in the company that I fell in love with as a youngster when I was getting into wrestling. I think that would be a good route for him. But hey, I'm not saying if he went to AEW, I wouldn't enjoy it, or that he wouldn't have a good time either. I'm just saying on the surface, those two options, if you could do that within a year, I think that'd be fantastic. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Look, whatever his decision is, obviously that's the one he makes. So, and obviously we want the best decision for him, his family. You know, But he has said he's open to moving to America. Like he
Full
stated
time?
that. The interview on the Metro said he's willing to relocate, and he said even though we've just spent loads of money on doing up our kitchen, me and the missus have had a conversation and we're willing to move to America, like relocate.
Right.
So
that wasn't really on the table before, was it? So that's
no. So
yeah.
I mean, it opens up a lot of doors. My thing would be someone like Ospreay. I don't want to say he gets lost quickly because he definitely doesn't, but I would love to see him, and it sounds really cheeky, but I would love to see him do something with WWE just to Mania, right? As you said, Mania to Mania. And then the minute he finishes at Mania, he leaves, the contract's done. Then, for example, he's able to go to AEW, do something at AEW, and then by December, for example, he's in TNA. That way, he's the only person to wrestle for all three companies within one calendar year. because that's such a big thing.
Yeah. And he's like, I think that, the ball's in his court, I think he could get away with that. But he might want to just tie himself down to one of these companies and just be done with it, it'd be interesting. Of course, you mentioned just a moment ago the Metro article, and I would suggest checking it out. Of course, friend of the channel, Alison McGeorge, got that exclusive, and of course, big fan of his work. He's been on the channel before on our build-up show, so please go and support him over there on Metro's wrestling section by checking out that, really interesting article about Ospreay and his future. As you say, though, doing up his kitchen, but willing to kind of move to America. If you move to America, you can keep your place over here as a holiday home. Don't get me wrong. I think.
Do you know what makes me laugh?
If you've got that kind of money, it'll work out.
I was reading it when I read the interview. It was just things he was saying. I was like, he's such a British guy. He's like just spent money on the kitchen, and he's like speaking to the missus. When you
could you imagine reading like an article? If you imagine like I don't know. I don't want to name names, but certain like American wrestlers, I can't imagine reading their articles and it coming across like that as well, using that kind of.
It's crazy, isn't it? But it's just one of us. That's what.
Not just the terms, but even just saying, I've just done the kitchen.
Exactly.
No, a big fan of Ospreay and his work, of course, and I do, as you say, hope the best for him. And not only that, I've got to be greedy with it, mate. I'm going to say I hope it's the best for wrestling fans as well, not just for him and his family and the companies he's going to make a lot of money for, but us as wrestling fans. And I think there's potential in each of those companies. And the other one, of course, that we haven't really thought about is staying on at New Japan as well. So
he's done it, hasn't he?
I think that's the issue. Yeah, it'd be a big loss for them. It really will.
I think the only thing that kind of opens the door for that would be, let's say he goes AEW, he could do.
He can always go back.
The thing with AEW, you're signed to them, but it's not like
it's a bit more
solely to AEW. You can do house other indie shows and things like that. So yes, that works in his favor. But at the same time, if you're just dedicated to one show and then you really put the grind in and it builds even more with you on your back. It shows that you're a leader, and you're the brand, so that makes you even more hot profit.
Because he can't even say to TNA, "Look, I'm going to go do this, and I'll be with you in a few months." Because the thing is, at the end of that WWE run, if he did have hypothetical short run, he could love it so much that he ain't leaving, and he signs an extension. So, but I just think he's got so much about him that he might be able to swing a temporary kind of, contract that is 3 to 6 months or something like that. So it'd be interesting to see where he ends up. Looking forward to it. Of course, we'll be covering it here on the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. As I mentioned earlier on, we've got content coming up very soon on WWE's Crown Jewel. We'll be having our prediction and preview episode on this very YouTube channel. If you're listening for the first time on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please make sure you subscribe and you'll be getting it in your feeds there as well. What you will only get on the YouTube channel, though, is and our Twitch, of course, is the build-up show, which we like to do on the night of a PLE. We'll get yourselves and ourselves hyped up for the show, talking about all the latest breaking news and things like that going into the show, talking about set reveals and stuff like that, all the fun stuff on the night of a PLE. Now, it is as we mentioned earlier on, going to be on at a relatively decent time for us in the UK. We always love covering the Saudi shows because it means we can stay up late enough to do a watch along. Now, we do watch the shows live, but it doesn't always work out as far as going live because we are absolutely shattered when they're on the UK times. But this PLE will be on at a reasonable time, so we'll be doing a watch along for that as well. So stick with us on the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel if you want to see our kind of thoughts as the show is going along. And then straight after that, we'll be hitting you with a live instant reaction review as well, and hopefully some more content surrounding Crown Jewel as well. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. As I mentioned a moment ago, find us again on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you haven't signed up there as well. And of course, I know a lot of people don't watch podcasts, they just want to listen. So if you've had a friend you wanted to get into the show before, now's your chance. If they are someone that likes to listen to podcasts in their car or on their way to sleep or anything like that, rather than
on their way to sleep.
Mate, right. That's what I do. I listen to certain podcasts in bed to kind of get to sleep, which makes them sound boring. They're not. It's just it kind of helps. But anyway, it's been really good chatting wrestling with you again, Rob. It's again a Tuesday night for us here in the UK. We're going to try our best to hit you more of these kind of podcasts that just kind of jump all over the place for the kind of the latest news and opinions and things like that, rather than just doing coverage of PLEs as well. We're going to be trying to cover more TNA and AEW within that as well, and of course continuing our extensive coverage of WWE. We mentioned earlier on the Impact Tour coming here to the UK. Of course, WWE are here at the UK in the UK as well. This weekend they'll be at Wembley Arena, and we'll have representatives from the Rebellious Noise crew heading down there as well. Thankfully invited along for the ride, so we'll be there on Sunday, I believe, to kind of cover that show as well. So that'll be a fun one. Stick right here on the channel. I'm sure next week we'll have a few things to say about that house show. It's always interesting to go to a house show. As much as I like televised events and PLEs and stuff like that, house shows, as you said earlier on, Rob, are quite interesting because you get to see certain wrestlers try out new things, whether that be a move set or an attire, or just kind of sharpening up some chemistry with an act before we see it on TV as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what WWE kind of throw our way at Wembley this weekend. But anyway, is there anything you want to say before we get out of here, Rob?
No, I'm just excited for TNA to come back.
Me too, man.
I'm debating about getting Impact Plus just to get myself like more hype.
Yeah,
it's cheap as well, I'm debating it. I really am. If I do, then
if you do, then you've got to be our TNA correspondent. You can't just watch all that.
I was so giddy watching Bound for Glory. I really was. I felt like the first time I'd watch wrestling again. I know that sounds proper strange.
Wow.
I was so excited. Excited.
That's a big claim, man. That's a big claim. No, I'm glad to hear it. And this, as we said earlier on, just really excited to see what they can do in the next few months. It's going to be an interesting time for them, but it's an interesting time for wrestling, man. Like, what's Ring of Honor do? It's still in its early stage of being owned by Tony Khan. What does AEW do after kind of moving away from its troubling year it had? Now we're kind of getting into, new kind of pastures for them as well. WWE, there's changes there with TKO, and we're about to get into flipping Survivor Series. Before you know it, we're on the road to WrestleMania after Royal Rumble as well. So it's a really interesting time to be a wrestling fan. Great talking wrestling with you once again, Rob. Thank you to everyone that's watched us live or on demand or on our audio feed, as we mentioned earlier on. We have been a Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling podcast on the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel on YouTube, and would love it if you would subscribe and if you join us for our next stream. As I mentioned earlier on, we'll be covering Crown Jewel with our predictions and preview next week, and we'll also be back for the build-up show and our review shows as well. But anyway, I've been Scott. This one's been Rob, and we'll see you on the next one.
Welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. On this channel, we bring you some great content from inside and outside of the squared circle. We will...
You turned us off. Scott. We're still live. We're still live. I can't hear you. I still can't hear you. It's muted, everyone.